And so one of the things that I find very, very important to deal with, which is an uncomfortable subject that generally people don't want to deal with unless they're really into it, is the subject of conspiracy theories. So I'm going to bring up that uncomfortable subject and say some things about it. Is that, first of all, I'm somebody who's actually tended to believe in conspiracy theories going way, way back. Like, I'm old enough that I remember when John F. Kennedy was murdered, and my father took my family down to Washington, D.C. to his funeral and to this big procession and all that. And, I was hearing things back then when I was a teenager that it wasn't really just one lone shooter, Lee Harvey Oswald, that there was probably more people and all that. And it always intrigued me, like it didn't make sense what I was hearing then about the official explanation of how Kennedy was killed. And then fast forward to when the World Trade Centers were collapsed. And again, at first I just believed the official explanation that these airplanes went in and they made the towers fall. But then as I actually researched and started looking at more videos and more forensic reports and things like this, I just said, this doesn't make any sense. I realized that those buildings were made to withstand an airplane impact when they were designed, and just to do localized damage. So how could those going in make it just perfectly neatly fall straight down like that, both towers? And after looking at it, I came to the conclusion that could only happen if there was demolition charges placed in the buildings in strategic places. And so again, whether you agree with that or not is not that important. I'm just saying that I have been open to the idea that there are conspiracies which are hidden from us that the media doesn't talk about, and that these official commissions, give false conclusions. So in my family, people think of me as kind of the weirdo because I believe in some of that stuff. I believe that there are kind of a conspiracy on the part of many big global corporations and bankers and the politicians they work with to control the economy. And that doesn't even seem very hidden. It seems sort of obvious. But what's going on now is very, very different. There is groups that are so intensely into this social media version of multiple conspiracy theories everywhere you look. And the main thing is QAnon. That's this one outlet that is, we've heard a lot about, it's in the news a lot. And that's become really like a world following now, kind of like a religion. And when I listen to what they have to say, which is full of conspiracy theories, to me it doesn't make sense. I don't believe most of what they're saying. I think there's just a whole lot of disinformation and some true things mixed in with many things that are either just exaggerated or totally false that can never be verified. And so what I've noticed is that people seem to fall into one of 3 or 4 categories in regards to these conspiracy theories. And you'll see why I'm talking about this on a Lightworker conference pretty soon. One is to just completely deny the whole thing. Just to deny that anything outside of what mainstream media is telling us is just to sort of doubt it and poo-poo it or feel so threatened by it that you don't even want to go there and think about it. That's one way to respond to what's going on. Another way is to be like a QAnon devotee and just dive into spending hours and hours on these sites that are just stirring up people's emotions and creating more and more polarization, and that are full of, honestly, a lot of disinformation combined with some true things that are kind of tantalizing because they actually are true, and then leaving people, it's a form of like mind programming, really. So that's another way to do it. Then there's people that seem to be much more grounded, and they spend their lifetime just researching really carefully some of these issues about different hidden things agendas going on. And I've listened to a lot of their stuff. And again, that's what they choose to do, and they seem more grounded, at least, in talking about a lot of these theories. There's a subject called spiritual awakening. And that's another one of these terms that's just thrown around, spiritual awakening. And a lot of people will say it and not know exactly what it means, and maybe they'll see other people that seem to be awake, and maybe think, I'm not so awake, but this teacher seems really awake. I believe there's 2 aspects to spiritual awakening. One of them is totally internal. And as I say these words, I just suggest you feel these things rather than taking it in as an intellectual idea. And that's really simply one thing. It's when you feel and experience the essence of who you are as more of your identity. And last week when I was talking about the initiations, that's when people go through the third initiation, it's a form of significant awakening because our identity is now coming from the true self, our I am presence. And while you are very, very human, and will always be as long as we're here, you're not identifying so much through the ego self as who you are and what motivates you, and you're experiencing this presence as your identity. So that's, and then there's many levels of awakening more and more to that, embodying that more and more. And that's a lot what we talked about last week. So that's one aspect of awakening. It's also just where love fills your life, and love is what's motivating you and what you see in people and what you see in the world, and you can even apply it to yourself. One of the hardest love assignments we have is loving ourselves so much in our modern society. That's awakening. And that what you are motivated to do, what you love doing, becomes things that really serve and benefit and uplift other people. That becomes, your love of life, because, you see that there's not really ultimately any separation. So that's one aspect of awakening. Now there's another aspect of awakening, which I would call wake up and smell the coffee, dude, or dudess. And that's actually seeing that there's some things going on this planet that are very disturbing and that are actually, in a sense, conspiracies or dark agendas. And you stop denying it, and you're willing to see what's going on and act appropriately to be part of the solution. And out of the people I know who are really devoted to their spiritual path, most of them, again, they fall in, either they just deny the whole thing and don't want to think about that because it's disturbing and it doesn't make me feel good and I'd rather just stay in my own peaceful bubble. Or they really dive into the QAnon conspiracy stuff and get really caught up in that. That's what I mainly have been seeing, among people who I know who are in the spiritual community. And my good friend Dan and I just created a new podcast. We just started this week, and it's called We Straddle, Bridging the Great Divide in Our Spiritual Community. So you'll get emails about how you can access those. You can listen to them anytime. They'll just be posted online. It's not like something you come to at a certain given time. So we're addressing that divide between those two groups, the ones that are oblivious to any of that kind of stuff and don't want to hear about any of it, the dark things that don't fit into our mainstream dialogue, and the other ones who are just seem to be like completely involved in it. But I'm personally not choosing either of those extremes. I'm just really I'm doing my best to be willing to feel the discomfort of knowing that there are some very dark things going on this planet, and there are some forces of people who are, you have to use the word, conspiring, planning to do some major disruptions in the very near future that are very harmful to the well-being of most people. And that this has been going on for a long, long time, and it's just coming to this crescendo. And even all the astrologers I know can look at the astrology and just see these really, heavy-duty, aspects coming in the next few weeks and next, couple of months. So whichever way you look at it, we're in a very intense time. So the main reason people wouldn't want to think about this stuff is because it makes you scared. Like, whoa, it makes me scared and nervous and anxious and keeps me up at night, so why would I want to think about it? But see, that's what I really want to talk about. This is something really in my heart that I've been feeling. Actually, last night I was taking a walk by myself, and a lot of times when I'm walking at night down by the bay, I get a lot of these flows or downloads, I'd call it, and I often dictate them into my phone. And what this one was about is the thing that probably I've talked about a lot in different ways, and many of us have talked about, and that's that, who are we really? We are the Christ. You are the Christ. I am the Christ. We are the embodied divine source being. Right now, not after we improve ourselves or progress on our spiritual path, like right now. That's who we are. And so if we are willing to have the courage to accept and maybe actually look into and investigate some of these dark agendas that are going on, we don't have to go into fear about it, because the light is always way, way stronger. Even though those things seem so big and scary, and there's so much money and power and weapons and all this stuff behind a lot of the people, planning this stuff, it's not a match for the light. And by light workers really being in our power and using the things that are given to us to do to express that, we are making a significant difference to prevent those things from happening. See, that's what I'm trying to say. We don't have to feel resigned to it, either deny it or feel resigned to it. It's all being decided right now. There's nothing predestined about all this. There's an old saying that goes way, way back. When good people do nothing is when evil prevails. Or maybe it's the other way around. Evil prevails when good people do nothing. And so in this case, I don't know if it's that, there's definitely a lot of doing we can do, but it's also being. And one of the things that, as you notice, we've done in a lot of these meetings is speaking decrees. I am the cosmic violet fire, things like this. There's tremendous power in this, because what is a decree? A decree is when you allow your God divine self to speak through your vocal cords and to give a command to put out a truth that has vibration, that has substance. It's very a powerful substance. That's what we're doing when we do that. So last night I was just really compelled to speak some very powerful decrees for quite a while. So I believe that if good people do nothing, if we act complacent, check out, deny, don't wake up and smell the coffee and just try to stay in our spiritual bubble, and not just those people on this call, but we're talking about millions and millions of people that could be considered light workers in various different ways and forms, then yes, it's likely the evil will prevail and will do some real damage. But I feel totally confident that if good people do step up and claim the power of love and of light and just claim fearlessness, your warrior self, and really see this planet flowering in love and in harmony, and people cooperating and doing the work, like really doing what we need to do to pull ourselves back from the brink of these crises and this year 2020 and move into something much more positive where that's less divisive. If you're willing to see it and decree it and feel it and visualize it, that's powerful. That's power. We've often thought of power as power over someone else, like when you have more guns than them or more money than them or more cops that work for you. That's just an external reflection of power. Power is a divine attribute. Power is the red ray that's part of the divine emanation that comes into creation. And rays are another way to express the energies that are the building blocks of everything in the universe. So just really quick 1 or 2 minute explanation of the rays is that the 3 primary rays or emanations from source are the red ray of power, the blue ray of love and wisdom, and the yellow ray of intelligence and knowledge. And then there's another 5 or 6 rays that also have different attributes, but those are the 3 main ones. The violet ray is the one of ceremony and higher consciousness and manifestation. That's another one a lot of us have been working with. People who are light workers, who are healers, who are artistic kind of people, humanitarians, love the blue ray. We love that love and wisdom. We just really can eat that up and feel very comfortable with that and really respect and honor people that are really blue ray kind of people that are just emanating a lot of love and gentleness and wisdom. And we really love the yellow ray. A lot of us are, just love gathering knowledge and skills and healing abilities and studying lots of things and reading a lot of books and tapping into, the secret ancient knowledge that's being unearthed and things like that. That's more like yellow ray kind of stuff. Like a lot of what Joe Dispenza puts out is a lot of yellow ray, like a lot of real wisdom and, here's how the mind really works. But what most light workers are pretty uncomfortable with is the red ray of power. And I have theories about why that is. I think part of it is that when we think of power, several things come up. And after I finish speaking, I'd love to hear what other people would say about this. But one of the reactions is, well, I just feel powerless. I feel so helpless to really make a difference in this world. Like, who am I? I'm just a, person who just does my healing work or does, paints and does pictures, and all these powerful people are out there with the military and the government and all this. I feel kind of powerless in relation to all that. That's one way to deal with power. Another way is to kind of feel like, yeah, I'm very powerful, but I feel afraid of it because I feel like if I have it, I'll misuse it. I'll get into my ego and hurt people, because of some past life soul memories. But you see, these people who are running the big corporation, those what's called the power elite, they love the red ray. They're really comfortable with it. They dig it. I'm not saying they're all like that. There's plenty of people that run corporations and are in government that are really good people. I'm talking about a certain group. They're doing this kind of manipulative work. So I'm only referring to them, not everybody who's a corporate CEO or anything. But that group I'm talking about, they love power. They're not squeamish about it like lightworkers tend to be. So I feel like we lightworkers need to claim our power, the power of love, the power of decree. When we claim ourselves as the Christ, when we claim ourselves as the divine essence, that our power to have that conviction is greater than anybody who's a bad actor out there trying to pull off some shenanigans. This is uncomfortable saying this stuff because I know I've been judged a lot for talking about this. I remember the first time Rita's in the audience, and I know she would probably witness this, the first time I ever led a retreat for Bridge to Mastery, which was at the Marconi Center out by Point Reyes. It was going really, really well. And then I read a few pages out of a book talking about this type of thing I'm saying. And I remember a few people in the room were like aghast, and one woman like chewed me out for like 20 minutes. Like, how dare you say that stuff? That is so unpleasant and so dark. And I said, well, I feel like that's part of awakening. We need to see what's going on and do the research and really find out about these things. So yeah, it's a very intense subject. One of the images that we have from literature is Gulliver's Travels. And I remember this image where Gulliver fell asleep on some island somewhere, and when he woke up, he was tied down with hundreds of tiny little ropes staked into the ground. And these little people called the Lilliputians were running all around him, and they were all gloating, "We've captured this giant." They were like this big in comparison to a human being or something. And so he was scared, like, oh my God, these people with all these swords and knives, they've captured me. But then he suddenly said, wait a minute, he just flexed his muscles and all the ropes just popped off. And he just stood up and all the Lilliputians went running because they didn't really have any power over him. It just seemed that way. A light worker is representing the light, and nobody has power over the light. And it's like the old analogy. There's a dark room looks like it has a substance in it called darkness. It looks real, like you can see it. You can see darkness with your eyes. And then there's all these connotations like the fear of the dark, or what could there be there, or could there be a boogeyman, or could some shelf fall over in my head with a can of nails on it, or whatever it is. But as soon as you turn a bright light on, you see that it was nothing. It was just the absence of light. That's what I feel we need to do now. That's what I need to do. That's what I'm choosing to do. I can't speak for anyone else. But I feel like there's a little less than 3 weeks before this election. But, there's definitely a lot of very viable threats of violence and going on, and extreme worked up people. I hold a vision of all that kind of can diffuse. And maybe, whatever incidents happen to be sort of moderated. I'm holding that vision. And one thing that complicates this is that, we're all going through our own stuff. I mean, lightworkers it's not like we're just in this total peaceful, mellow place and just yes, I'm just going to project all this power out. I mean, we're having to face everything right now. Everything is coming up. It's all just in our face. Everything that's in us, the good, the bad, the ugly, the light, the dark. It's, because this is just the time we're in. Everything is that's been hidden is coming up, and we have to keep applying our consciousness and our love and our light to it. But nevertheless, this is the time we're in. And I know I'm Jewish, and I have relatives who survived and made it to this country before the early Holocaust. And there is some villages that my ancestors lived in in Poland and in Lithuania, where they were living there and they started hearing about the threat of the Nazis. And at first they probably kind of ignored it. Well, that's happening somewhere else. And then some bad things started happening to them. And again, they say, well, this will probably blow over. This is not going to be that big of a deal. And then it got worse. And then they started hoping, well, we just got to hang in there. And somehow, like, things have always been good before, so we'll probably get through this. But it just got worse and worse and worse till they were all hauled away to the concentration camps. And then there was a lot of very wealthy Jewish industrialists who felt like, well, even if it's happening to all those poor people, I'm a respected part of this society. It'll never happen to me. And yet it happened to a lot of them too. Again, I'm not saying these things to try to create negativity or fear. I'm just saying complacency is not a good thing right now. And we have tools available to us that none of those people knew about in those days. And the final thing I want to say is something from the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu. He said there's 3 kinds of rulers. By ruler means like a king, a ruler, somebody who rules a kingdom. There's the really inferior ruler, there's the mediocre ruler, and then there's the superior ruler. And this I feel is really significant. I think about this a lot. The inferior ruler is kind of weak and he's not respected. He or she is not respected by the people. And so there's just a lot of chaos and corruption going on. The medium kind of ruler is strong and kind of violent and rules through fear and intimidation. And so the kingdom is pretty well organized because everybody's scared to go up against this king. So it's better than the inferior ruler, but it's still very unpleasant being in the kingdom, and it really limits the potential of the people, and because there's fear. And then the superior ruler, when a superior ruler is ruling, everything flourishes in the kingdom, and everybody says it just happened naturally. They don't even think the king has anything to do with it. That's really cool, isn't it? They don't say, oh, the king was so wise and great, that's why the kingdom's flourishing. It's just because the king is holding that higher space, is holding that vibration, is able to hold such a big field of light that everything else comes into coherence with it, and somehow things go well, without fear and intimidation. So that's what I feel the opportunity is. We really step up and take responsibility to hold this light, to be in a state of love, to be radiating light, even if we're having, days that feel weird and challenging to us, just whatever, just to be responsible, to really care, hold this light. Let's say better outcomes happen toward the end of this year than a lot of people are worried about. They'll say it just happened. The American people woke up, enough good people took a stand, whatever they'll say, or they'll just feel relieved and move on. But we don't need any credit. Basically what it is you just really feel in your heart and soul. What is the truth that you stand for? This is vibration. This is pure vibration. When we do these decrees, we're putting it out into the space. Like we're helping to be the superior king. We're part of that role, a part of that movement of the superior king that is just putting out that vibration of the light and letting it be more and more expansive and fill the space. And I really feel literally, it's like the dark closet. The darkness is seen to be nothing the more the light is turned on. Our throat is very important, like to speak it. Like it's one thing to read it or to meditate silently, as it has a whole virtue, but when you speak it, you're putting it out into the shared space. So I am the blazing violet fire, cleansing, purifying, protecting, and uplifting everything to do with the U.S. presidential and other elections, October, November 2020, in all dimensions and existences. I am divine power, I am divine justice, I am divine freedom, I am divine common sense, I am divine presence, I am divine forgiveness, I am divine compassion, I am divine brotherly and sisterly love, infecting the hearts and minds of all human beings. Now,
I am radiant energy showing the path of love to all.
See, as sovereign beings, we get to just make this up. There's nobody you need to ask permission for. You just speak your truth, put it out there.